DKDB Nashville.
Hello friends, Lou Pickney with you here. It's the DKDB update, February 18th, 2026. Not too far away from the 2026 NFL Combine. Got my DKDB database here updated today. Personally curated, this expert curated database. No AI, no committee, no filler, only the best of the best. I'm going to have some reactions here to three of the latest. These mock drafts here in the DKDB. First, we'll start with Ayrton Ostly from USA Today. It's the DKDB update. Be sure to bookmark the DKDB page. Check it on a regular basis. The best of the best in there. Let's see what Ayrton Ostly has in this latest mock. Be sure to go through. I'll have the links to these mock drafts in the description section of the YouTube video that'll be going up later today. Be sure to read these for yourself, go through. A lot of great insight and analysis. Gotta put the best of the best in here. So at one is almost everybody's going to have. Ayrton has Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, Indiana, to the Raiders at 1. At 2, Arvell Reese, Ohio State linebacker. Very versatile player, can play edge rusher if need be. Off-ball linebacker, even drop back into coverage. The Jets need to boost their defense, so we'll go Reese here at 2. At least that's according to the latest mock draft from Ayrton Ostly of USA Today. At 3, Spencer Fano, offensive tackle, Utah to the car. That's interesting. This is the higher end of what you'll see with Fano. Some see him as the top offensive tackle. Some say he's good, but maybe more mid to late first range. So opinions will vary. The Cards are going to need it right. Offensive tackle for the 2026 season. So I think offensive tackle is a distinct possibility at 3, at least the way it looks now prior to free agency and the inevitable changes that'll happen as players sign. Some players leave town. At 4, the Titans, edge rusher, David Bailey, Texas Tech. I really like the idea of the Titans getting an edge rusher here at 4. Whether it's Bailey, Ruben Bain Jr., or Arvell Reese if he were to fall. At 5, Carnell Tate, Ohio State wide receiver to the Giants. I still question if the Giants would really use a top 5 pick on a receiver when they already have Malik Neighbors. But if you think, okay, corner's another major need, but perhaps you don't value these corners in this draft as the top 5 pick, look, Tate would fill a need. The guy's remarkably quick at getting open in 3 seconds or less. Outstanding at catching the ball. His hands just doesn't drop it. So this has Tate at number 5 to the Giants. At number 6, Ayrton Ostly of USA Today says Jordan Tyson to the Browns. I thought the Browns could go receiver here at number 8 and then target an offensive tackle at number 24. At 7, Ruben Bain Jr. to the Commanders. I really like this. I think the Commanders have a very good shot at landing at least, only, but one of the 3 should be there between Bain, David Bailey, edge from Texas Tech, and Ohio State linebacker Arvell Reese. If one of those 3 aren't there, there'll be some other talents, obviously sliding, that could be considered. But I think if you're the Commanders, you come to this saying, we've got a pretty good shot at 7 getting one of the 3 best edge rushers, if they see it that way. So a lot to go between now and April 23rd. At number 8, New Orleans Saints, Jeremiah Love. A lot of people are saying that. And part of the thought is, yes, the Saints need help at receiver, but perhaps if the Saints like Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate and they're gone, well, here's Jeremiah Love, an outstanding running back. Great at receiving as well. He would give a boost to that Saints offense if he were to go there at 8. Number 9, Kansas City Chiefs, Caleb Downs, safety, Ohio State. It's interesting the Chiefs will have a few different options here. Been a while since Kansas City's had a top 10 draft pick. This will be the first time in 10 years for a safety to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft if Downs goes in the top 10. If it's going to happen in the next few years, you'd figure this would be the draft, this would be the year, with many quarterbacks returning to college for the upcoming season, and a unique talent like Downs, so it's just remarkable his ability to read and react. At 10, Mansour Delane to the Bengals. There's some Bengals fans I know that do not want them taking a corner at 10. but they might. The lane's there. You could go to the Bengals at 10. At 11, Ayrton has Jermod McCoy, corner from Tennessee, to the Dolphins. That would fill a big need for Miami. McCoy tore ACL in one of his knees in January of last year, so he's had more than a year to recover. The expectations that he will impress people at his workouts. I'm not sure what his involvement at the combine will be, to be determined on that. But he's going to work out, and the expectation is, look, he's going to go out there and show he's still got the goods. He was really good in the 2024 season, didn't play it all last year. But here, Ayrton Ostly of USA Today says McCoy of the Dolphins at 11. At 12, here's Sonny Styles of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, if Styles, this is hardly a given that Styles will be here if you look at some of the latest projections. But if he is, I think the Cowboys really would have to go in that direction and then maybe go with an edge rusher at 20 or a corner. But just a thought with Styles, edge rusher really be what they need. But Styles, a linebacker that can play safety, that hybrid ability, really good talent. And so Styles to the Dallas Cowboys here at 12. And my reaction to Ayrton Ostly of USA Today, latest mock draft, the best of the best here in the DKDB. Personally curated, expert curated database. That includes this. At 13, the LA Rams get Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle, Miami Hurricanes. Been some mixed opinions on if the Rams have the components in-house to cover the retirement of Rob Havenstein. But if Mauigoa's on the board here at 13, a lot of thought Mauigoa could go top 3, so he's there at 13. And that could work out well for the Rams, who also have a pick at number 29. At 14, Ayrton has Venga Ione, interior lineman from Penn State. One of the best interior offensive linemen in the draft, if not the best. Here, Baltimore gets him at 14. At 15, Cassius Howell to the Bucs. It makes sense. The Bucs have need at edge rusher. I think Sonny Styles would be great to go to the Bucs here if he's on the board, but that's not the case here. And so it's Cassius Howell to the Bucs. At 16, Mekhi Lemon to the Jets. Heard some thoughts of that. The Jets, if one of those top receivers is still around at 16, and they have needed corner and definitely have to do some things to boost up that defense, but a lot of room for improvement. The Jets, of course, have 3 picks in next year's first-round picks in next year's draft, so they've got time to build. They don't have to force a quarterback here. Something to keep in mind. And here, Ayrton says Lemon to the Jets. It's my reaction. This latest mock draft from Ayrton Ostly of USA Today at 17. Caden Proctor, Alabama, offensive lineman to the Lions. Proctor, 6'7", 366 pounds, versatile, very talented, and has the potential, if he can stay healthy, to have a long and productive NFL career. At 18, the Vikings get Caleb Banks, defensive tackle, Florida. He impressed a lot of people down in Mobile during the Senior Bowl week. He only played in 2 games last season. Injuries are an issue. But when he's healthy, he's a special talent. You'll get that with the linemen in these first rounds projections. They're by and large be great athletes to go with tremendous size. And so Banks certainly fits the bill on that. Banks to the Vikings at 18. At 19, Ayrton has Keldrick Falk, edge from Auburn, going to the Carolina Panthers. Falk's got great size. He's one of those what they call a 3-down defensive end. He won't be a liability on run plays. He's got the size to handle it. He's also a tremendous pass rusher, and that's what they're looking for first and foremost, as far as the advantages that go in the NFL. And here the Panthers get Keldrick Falk at 19. At 20, Dallas back on the board. I mentioned corner might be an option if they go with Sonny Styles, linebacker at 12. And here it's Colton Hood, corner from Tennessee. Had to really step up with McCoy's injury last season, keeping him out all of 2025. Hood played well in that top corner role for the Vols, and here he goes to the Cowboys at 20. At 21, Avion Terrell, corner from Clemson to the Steelers. I could see that. There'd be a lot of corners considered in this range. That's a distinct possibility. Terrell had a solid career at Clemson. If he can stay healthy, I guess that's a caveat with all of them now, isn't it? But especially the thought with Terrell, if his frame can prove to handle the rigors of the NFL, he should be really good. At 22, Caleb Lomu, offensive lineman, Utah to the LA Chargers, would likely want to use him as a guard. That's kind of where their need is. And if Venga is not there, as much as I like the matchup of Venga going to the Chargers, the way it is now, prior to free agency. But if that's not an option, then perhaps Caleb Lomu, young player, redshirt sophomore, came pro, came out to the pros, who could have gone back to college. But with these linemen, most of them were going to come out if they could. If they're getting the thought, like Lobo, I'm sure heard, that he's likely to be a first rounder, and at worst, early second day. Number 23, Philadelphia Eagles, Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon. The thought is there's really one tight end that's likely to be drafted in the first round, and it's Sadiq. And so the Eagles will have a number of options, ways they could go here. I think Sadiq would be a really good fit. Special talent. The Eagles have options. If Sadiq's there, that could be a good one for them. At 24, the Cleveland Browns back on the board. And so here they go with offensive tackle and Monroe Freeling from Georgia. Freeling's been showing up quite a bit on boards as of late. There are a lot of offensive linemen being talked about in this range. And that's where these workouts, the combine, all of that's going to come into play. Got to be really sold on a player to use a first-round pick on him. But offensive tackle is a need position for the Browns. And here, Ayrton Ostly of USA Today says, Monroe Freeling to the Browns. 25, Chicago Bears. P.J. Parker, edge from Clemson. Had kind of a down year last season, but really impressed people in Mobile, Senior Bowl. Those practices, he really shined. He had a great 2024 and a great 2023. I think he's going to continue to impress people, and it could prove that 25 is considerably lower than where he'll actually go in the draft. But here, he's still on the board, and so it's Parker to the Bears at 25. At 26, Ayrton has Casey Concepcion, wide receiver from Texas A&M, going to the Bills. A lot of talk about Concepcion to the 49ers, but that can only happen if he's there. As here, the Bills give it 26, and 27, 49ers still go with receiver, but instead go with the 6'4", Denzel Boston. Washington Huskies. 28, Peter Woods out of Clemson. So you're starting to see this on some boards where it's not Peter Woods as the number one defensive tackle off the board, but still in many cases he's going to be a first rounder as far as projections. He's just too good as a pass rusher, even if there are concerns about how he'll fare up against a run. He's really fast, really quick. And so here it's the Texans going Peter Woods at 28. At 29, Chris Johnson, corner from San Diego State. Ayrton Ostly has the Rams going with Johnson here at 29. So if you go with Maui Noah up at 13, you know there'll be quality corners here in this range. So that's what the projection is in this mock for the Rams. Johnson might surprise some people, might impress some people. His name hasn't been mentioned as much in these late first. I have him in my most recent mock. We'll see. He'll have a chance to prove himself. At 30, a matchup I really like. C.J. Allen to the Broncos, if he's there, and that's hardly a guarantee. Allen to the Broncos, as it looks now, would be a good fit. At 31, Caleb Tiernan, offensive tackle, Northwestern to the Patriots. The Patriots, AFC champions, boost their offensive line. And then at 32, one I've seen quite a bit, Brandon Cisse, corner from South Carolina to the Seattle Seahawks. So that's my reaction to the latest mock draft from Ayrton Ostly of USA Today. Let's go through a couple more here real fast. Chris Gregory from Rotoball. Let's see what Chris has. Again, be sure to visit these mocks, read them for yourself. There's a lot of valuable insight and information in here. So my reaction here to Chris Gregory of Rotoball. At 1, like nearly everybody, that's Mendoza of the Raiders. At 2, Arvell Reese to the Jets. I still think more than half of the credible mocks have that. I'm sure the Jets are still, they've got time to decide. They don't have to lock anything in now, but Reese would be quite the fit for that defense that needs an upgrade or two. At 3, here's another thought that'll be Spencer Fano to the Cardinals. So the Cardinals go with offensive tackle at 3. It could be Fano. Fano is really good as a run blocker. He's good against the pass, too, but it'll be interesting to see how this ends up playing out. But Fano here going at the Cards at 3. At 4, Chris Gregory says Carnell Tate to the Titans. I think wide receiver makes more sense for the Titans than offensive tackle. I still think edge rusher, especially with the talent in this draft. But Carnell Tate is that unique talent, that ability to get open. Got to give Cam Ward a reliable receiver that he knows is going to hold on to the ball. And so here it's Tate to the Titans at 4. At 5, Jordan Tyson. Some of these receivers going early in this mock from Chris Gregory. So the Giants go with Jordan Tyson. Again, they've got Malik Neighbors, but he is coming back off an injury. And multiple weapons at wide receiver are important in the modern NFL. At 6, Francis Mauigoa to the Browns. I think that's a likely possibility. The Browns go with one of those top tackle prospects, whether it's Fano or Mauigoa here at 6. Knowing they'll be back on the board at 24. David Bailey to the Commanders. Again, one of those top edge players should be there. The top 2, whether it's Bailey or Reuben Bain Jr. for Miami or Arvell Reese. One of those 3 are likely to be there for the Commanders at 7. And so that would make sense given their needs. Jeremiah, here's another thought. Jeremiah Love to the Saints. A lot of that talk. I'm getting hard to ignore that talk. At 9, here's Reuben Bain Jr. still on the board. So again, there's some cap issues for the Chiefs that could steer this pick in different directions. But here, Bain is on the board. What a nice pickup for KC. Getting a top edge prospect at 9. Here at 10, Caleb Downs, safety, Ohio State. Going top 10. Bengals at 10. Is that a stopper for Downs? The Bengals fans know that do not want them to take a corner, very much want them to get Caleb Downs. They're very excited about that possibility. I mean, he's just up the road in Columbus. Here it's Cincinnati going with Caleb Downs at 10. At 11, Chris Gregory says, Mansour Delane, LSU corner to the Dolphins. I really like that matchup if Delane is there, given the Dolphins' needs. At 12, here's another thought to be Sonny Styles if he's there. The Cowboys can't trust that Styles would be there at 20. So if you go with Styles here at 12, you'll lock it in. At 13, the LA Rams, Mekhi Lemon. I think that makes a lot of sense. Get a top receiver prospect here. We come back at 29 later in the round. 14, here's Akeem Mesidor. So notice some mocks won't have Mesidor at all, and some will have him top 12, top 14. And here Mesidor will turn 25 years old in early April, which is old for an NFL prospect, especially one given serious first-round consideration. But he's an exceptional pass rusher. He had a great season last year with the Miami Hurricanes. And here at 14, the Baltimore Ravens. And Chris Gregory's latest mock for Rotoballer. Go with Akeem Mesidor. There's Kenyon Sadiq to the Bucs. That's a different line of thought. So Sonny Styles in there. Maybe their top edge prospects aren't there. I think of Sadiq. I would fill a need on the offensive side at 15. At 16, Jermod McCoy still on the board going to the Jets. So nice pickup for the Jets. It's a need position. The Jets had 0 interceptions in the 2025 season. 17 games and 0 total interceptions, which has never happened before in the NFL. I still don't, it's hard to fathom how that happened. At 17, Detroit Lions. So the Lions go with an interior offensive line need. They get Vanga Yone from Penn State. Vanga, much as I like him as a fit with the LA Chargers, just a lot of people that say he's not going to be there for the Chargers. He'll be gone before then. At 18, Chris Gregory says Colton Hood to the Vikings. The Vikings need a corner. And the pecking order of the corners to be determined on some of that. Hood is showing up more and more on boards. I anticipate my next first-round mock is going to have Colton Hood in it. There are a lot of talented corners under consideration for this draft. Here at 19, Caleb Banks, defensive tackle, Florida, is noted. Only played in 2 games last season, but he did impress a lot of people in Mobile. Showing up more and more down these mid-first-round range prognostications. And here at 19, Chris Gregory says Caleb Banks. At 20, TJ Parker. Going to the Dallas Cowboys, that would fill an edge rusher need. Parker is a riser. Talked about that earlier about, yes, Clemson was down last season, but you take that aside, the way he performed in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and his tape from 2024 and 2023, I mean, he's legit as an edge rusher. Be a great pickup for the Cowboys at 20, as projected here. At 21, here's Caleb Lomu going to the Steelers. Steelers going with Lomu. Caden Proctor to the Chargers. And this is the line of thought would be Proctor likely to play guard. And it's so unusual for a guy that is 6'7", 366 pounds to play guard. But Proctor is a unique talent. He can fill several different roles. At 23, Peter Woods, defensive tackle, Clemson to the Eagles. That would be interesting. Monroe Freeling to the Browns. The Browns. Let's see. Who do the Browns take here at 6? The Browns go with Mauigoa, and you come back at 24 and go Monroe Freeling. Heard of a 2 for Tuesday, but that's a little different. But hey, you know what? I mean, they can have multiple needs filled to that offensive line if that's the way they see it. That would be interesting to play out that way. At 25, Keldrick Falk to the Bears. So a lot of thought the Bears would go defensive line, whether it's a tackle or an edge. Falk, an edge rusher with good size. Actually would be a good fit, that Bears defense, if he's on the board at 25. At 26, a projected trade, the Jaguars. What's up, Tony Khan, down in Jacksonville? And they trade up and get Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, Ohio State. See that. McDonald had 8.5 tackles for loss last season for the Ohio State Buckeyes. At 27, another projection of San Francisco going with wide receiver Denzel Boston out of Washington. Brandon Ayuk, he's heading out of town. All likelihood. It'd be a shocker if he weren't playing elsewhere for next season. So the 49ers need another top receiver. Maybe Boston could be the answer. At 28, Max Einaker, offensive tackle, Arizona State to the Texans. So a lot of offensive linemen going here in this mock. 29, Brandon Cisse to the LA Rams. Do you think the Rams up here at number 13 with Mekhi Lemon? So you get a wide receiver. You come back at 29 where you know there'll be some corners. No matter if there are surprises, then there'll be some guys that you may think won't be there who will be. But there'll be some quality corners to be considered, is my point. So Brandon Cisse to the Rams at 29. At 30, another thought that I agree with here. C.J. Allen, linebacker, Georgia to the Denver Broncos. Chris Gregory at 31 says Casey Concepcion, still on the board, going to the Patriots at 31. And finally, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, safety from Toledo, going to the Seahawks at 32. That's my reaction to the latest mock draft from Chris Gregory of Rotoballer. All right, let's go through the latest mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, NFL.com. Version 2.0 mock draft. At 1, Fernando Mendoza from the Raiders. Everybody's going to have at this point. At 2, David Bailey, edge rusher, Texas Tech to the Jets. Interesting. At 3, Francis Maui-Noah, offensive tackle, Miami Hurricanes, Arizona Cardinals. I think that'd be a good matchup. It would fill a need for the Cards at right offensive tackle. At 4, talk about filling needs. Reuben Bain Jr., edge rusher, Miami to the Tennessee Titans. At 5, the New York Giants. So here's a thought from Daniel Jeremiah. We talked before, maybe they go with a corner here. Now saying Carnell Tate, wide receiver, Ohio State, there to the Giants at 5. Spencer Fano to the Cleveland Browns at 6. So Fano, offensive tackle, off the board here for Cleveland. At 7, Arvell Reese, Washington Commanders. So Reese still on the board, and that my line of thinking is that between Reese, Reuben Bain Jr., and David Bailey, one of those 3 players is likely to be there. Not guaranteed, but likely to be there at number 7 for the Commanders. At 8, Mekhi Lemon going to the New Orleans Saints. Lemon to the Saints, and that frees up Jeremiah Love at number 9 for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think from a need standpoint, that would be an ideal fit. The Saints really need a boost at receiver, and Love would be an excellent addition to that Chiefs offense. If Patrick Mahomes back and healthy and Love there in the backfield, you could have really even more difficult times for teams trying to stop the Chiefs. At 10, Caleb Downs, Ohio State safety. Cincinnati Bengals, Mansour Delane at 11 to the Dolphins. I like that. I think it makes sense. Jermod McCoy from Tennessee, the Cowboys at 12. So the Cowboys go with a corner here at 12, knowing they've got a pick at 20. At 13, now this is interesting. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, safety from Toledo to the LA Rams at 13. That's interesting. There's been some question on, will McNeil be seen as fast enough to have a first-round pick used? Like all that talk last year on Nick Imanwari as a first-round pick. He certainly had the talent for it, but the way the position is valued, he didn't end up going until day 2. And the Titans could have had him and then traded out with Seattle. At 14, Jordan Tyson, Baltimore Ravens. If he's on the board there, that could be a good pickup for Baltimore. 15, Sonny Styles. So Styles still on the board, and I think this is the floor as far as Styles falling in this draft. He'd be a great fit with the Bucs. At 16, Vanga Yone, one of the Jets. The Jets go interior offensive line at 16. That's interesting. I can see that. At 17, TJ Parker. I told you he's a riser. Up to 17 in this latest mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, NFL.com. 18, Dylan Thieneman, safety from Oregon, going to Minnesota at 18, which means 3 safeties going in the top 18 of this draft. Interesting. 19, Carolina Panthers, Keldrick Falk, edge rusher from Auburn. Well, I think Dallas might be hoping he'll slide to 20, but here he's off at 19, so instead Dallas goes Hakeem Mesidor, edge rusher, Miami. Denzel Boston, the Steelers at 21. I think it'd be a nice pickup there for the Steelers, a good fit. Kenyon Sadiq to the LA Chargers at 22. So Sadiq to the Chargers, that's interesting. 23, Blake Miller, offensive tackle, Clemson. There are a lot of different offensive tackles who have been mentioned just during this brief show here. You're going to see a lot of different ones given consideration for this range. Here the Eagles go Blake Miller at 23, Daniel Jeremiah at 24. Daniel says Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle, Georgia, for the Cleveland Browns. Thing for the Browns up there at 6. You get Fano, and you come back at 24, and you get another offensive tackle. That's interesting. That's really interesting. And it also reflects the limited number of what people may perceive as first-round talents in this draft. I was like, look, if you're going to load up in a position, go with some offensive linemen. Perhaps we'll see that happen. At 25, Daniel Jeremiah says Peter Woods to the Bears. At 26, Malachi Fields, who impressed a lot of people in Mobile during the Senior Bowl week practices. The Bills need a receiver. Malachi Fields, as Daniel Jeremiah notes, a wide catch radius. Fields to the Bills at 26. At 27, Lee Hunter, defensive tackle, Texas Tech to the 49ers. Caleb Lomu still on the board, going to the Texans at 28. Colton Hood, LA Rams at 29. And the Rams know there'll be some quality corners in this range they can go with at 29. At 30, C.J. Allen. Another thought will be C.J. Allen to the Broncos. If he's there, I like that pairing a lot. At 31, Zion Young, edge rusher, Mizzou. The Missouri's Zion Young to the Patriots at 31. And then at 32, Seattle Seahawks and Casey Concepcion, talented receiver out of Texas A&M, going to the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. Seattle gets Concepcion at 32. That's my reaction. Latest mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, NFL.com. So that's it for this DKDB update. I'm your host, Lou Pickney. Thanks for watching. Talk again soon. Bye for now.